Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of SciChat. SciChat, of course, is a two-part thing. First part is what you're listening to right now, which is a weekly recorded 30-minute webinar where I present to you a bunch of slides of data about a specific topic. This week's topic is online review sites. And then the second part of what SciChat actually is it's a community. So it's on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. If you go on Facebook and you search for SciChat, you'll find a community of more than 1,000 scientifically minded marketers who are interested in doing their jobs with data in mind, with the understanding that we can apply the scientific method to marketing and we can get better at our jobs because we are unafraid to challenge what I call unicorns and rainbows, superstitions and myths. And what I mean by that, unicorns and rainbows, if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say this before, but I go to a lot of marketing conferences, read a lot of marketing books and blogs, and I hear a ton of marketing advice, in social media specifically, but in marketing in general, that is like, it sounds really good, and it's comforting to hear. It's a lot of stuff like, be awesome, or engage in the conversation, or be transparent, be authentic, that sort of stuff. I call it unicorns and rainbows advice, because it's hard to disagree with. Like it sounds like a good thing, right? 'Cause I'm not going to come onto the webinar and tell you to punch your customers in the face or anything, but it's generally not based in anything more substantial than what feels right. It's truthy, to borrow Stephen Colbert's phrase. So as a scientifically minded marketer, as I call myself a social media scientist, as somebody who's interested in applying the scientific method to marketing and to communications, we have to go beyond the unicorns and rainbows, superstitions and myths. We have to go unicorn hunting, if you will. Because, I talked a little bit about this last week, but I've been thinking about it a lot. Beyond just being incorrect, meaning, beyond a piece of advice being a unicorns and rainbows superstition or myth, and just being wrong, they can be very dangerous, And I hear a lot. I see and I hear a lot of marketers, especially sort of small business marketers, typically folks who run their business, are really good at running their own business, making the product or the service or whatever it is that they do and that they sell, but have a hard time marketing it, or are having a hard time marketing it. Because typically what these types of folks have done is gone out and buy a few books, or follow a couple of people online that seem like they know what they're talking about, or find a book that was recommended to them by their friend who does something in marketing as well. And the book is filled with stuff that makes you agree with the author of the book, right? Because it's really easy to write a book where you agree with everything. Right. I mean, I could write a book about how Comic Sans is a terrible font, and everybody would agree with me, right? I'm not sure that it would be a bestseller, but certainly very few people would disagree with me. But the problem with a book like that, and a problem with a lot of these superstitions and myths, is that it doesn't change what you do, right? Nobody thinks Comic Sans is a good idea. Right. So it doesn't change what you do, and it doesn't help you do anything better. And then beyond that, a lot of these superstitions can actually be really dangerous in terms of setting priorities. One of the worst ones is this idea that the conversation is the most important thing to do, right? I have heard people at conferences talking about, smaller business folks who, don't know how to get started in social media, and their advice is, well, get out and have a conversation with people. Well, sure, but that's fun to do, but that's not going to build your reach. It's not going to build your bottom line as much as some other activities may. And so a lot of this stuff can be pretty dangerous. And so I take it upon myself as a scientifically grounded marketer, as a social media scientist, if you will, to help try to dispel some of these myths so that we don't get stuck in them. So this week's topic, as I said, is online review sites. And it's an interesting topic because there isn't a ton of research into it from a sort of quantitative point of view. And in fact, it's a little difficult to do large-scale data-based research. I've heard of notable brands doing small-scale research where, for instance, X brand is in a specific industry, and they'll look at their competitors in an industry and what they do on a site like Yelp, for instance, and they will find, typically what I hear is that they find that replying to reviews is not super important. In fact, I've even heard of sort of negative correlations between replying to reviews and having good reviews. I don't have any data about this here for a number of reasons. The APIs for the various review sites are set up such that it was very difficult to get in any large format. And then additionally, just the vast majority of businesses don't reply, and so it would be sort of difficult to get a sample set of replying and non-replying businesses that were, sort of statistically significant. But what I did do is I did a survey because I think it's interesting to look at review sites, not necessarily just from the business's point of view, but look at them from the consumer's point of view, and start to understand how review sites function and how people interact with review sites. And so one of the first things I did in my survey is I asked people, what makes you want to write a review about a business or product or service or whatever? And then I asked another question, and that was, what do you look for when you're reading online reviews? Okay. And these were paragraph entry fields, like, it was just sort of a free text entry thing. And I read through the thousands of responses that I had, and I categorized them into sort of topical areas. And what I found was really interesting. And so in this graph, what you see is the orange bars represent sort of topical areas that occurred a lot in answers to the question, what makes you want to write a review? The gray bar, on the other hand, the gray bars indicate prevalence of a specific topic areas that indicated that in the answers to the question, what do you want to look for? What do you look for when you read an online review? And what you see is when you sort of sort the list of topics, motivators, by things that occurred most heavily in what makes you want to write a review, you see a lot of words that indicate exceptional experiences, including the word exceptional, very, really good, great, really bad, extreme, terrible, extremely, very good, outstanding, especially excellent, horrible, particularly. So many of the most common words used in answers to the question, what makes you want to review a site, which makes you want to write an online review, are exceptional experiences, both exceptionally good and exceptionally bad. And you'll notice that when I asked the question, what do you look for, the occurrence of those kinds of words was actually extremely, extremely low, which starts to paint the picture that I think was the most telling thing I learned in my research about online reviews. That there are very different motivators between why people write reviews and why people read reviews. So if you just think about your own experiences, if I'm going to go buy something, or if I'm debating between two different places to go to dinner, or two different hotels to stay at, or two different whatever, or I'm just sort of curious to what other people think about a place, because I'm considering it for a purchase, and I go to read online reviews, I'm looking for sort of normal experiences. I want to know what the normal experiences are. I want to know, what are the kind of experiences that I could expect to have. However, when I think of the times that I've sat down to write a review, either on a site like Yelp or TripAdvisor, or even less structured format on a Twitter or Facebook, when I go to review a product or service or business place, I am motivated by extreme experiences. So like earlier tonight, I was eating a cookie I got at this place in Las Vegas. So I don't eat dairy. I have a dairy allergy, and so when I very rarely get to eat dessert foods. Dessert foods are typically the most dairy-rich foods on the planet, and so I don't often get to eat dessert foods. There is a cafe in Las Vegas called Red Velvet Cafe, and they specialize in vegan food. Now, I'm not vegan. I eat a lot of meat, but vegan food means that it doesn't have dairy in it. So for me, if a place has vegan food, that's typically pretty good because it means they'll have vegan cheese, which is some sort of fake cheese, which is delicious, or some sort of vegan desserts. And so this place has these unbelievable cakes. I had a great sandwich with cheese on it and real chicken and all this kind of stuff. And so I love this place. And so I was eating some cookies this evening after I'd gotten home from day out in town shopping and eating at Red Velvet Cafe. And I tweeted because I was enjoying these cookies. These cookies are outstanding, right? And so I tweeted about it. Now, if the cookies were just okay, or not great, they were just sort of then I probably wouldn't have tweeted. If they were awful, right, and like really expensive and disgusting, I would have tweeted. I would have been like, "These are terrible," but they were really good, so I tweeted about them. Or another instance, I am a big fan of JetBlue Airlines. I fly a lot, for work, and I love JetBlue. I tweet at them fairly regularly just because I think it's fun, but mostly I only tweet at them when they've done something super awesome. Like I had a great experience. I had a delay on a flight, one of the most recent times I flew, and delays happen, but the way that their employees and everybody handled it, the way the technology allowed me to see that I had a delay so I didn't leave for the airport too early, etc., was brilliant. And so I tweeted about them. The only other times I tweet about airlines are when I have really bad experiences, right? Like I've had in the past with airline. I'm not going to name the airline because I'm not trying to just bash airlines, but I've tweeted about other airlines when I've had bad experiences, but very bad experiences, not just experiences, like really bad experiences or really, really good experiences. So there's a disconnect there between why I read online reviews and why most people read online reviews and why most people write online reviews. And that I think is the interesting story, one of the most interesting stories I found in all my data. And so when you look at the same kind of breakdown, the comparison between the words that occurred and the answers to those two questions, the orange bars again are the answers to the question, what makes you want to write online reviews, and the gray bars are answers to the question, what do you look for in online reviews? Like when you're reading online reviews, what do you look for? Some of the most common words in the look for category, the look for question, were things like fact, useful, specific, consistent, like as in consistency or consistent, honest, and detail. So when I'm reading online reviews, I typically tend to be looking for fact-based things, like, this location, the specific reason that I didn't like this or that I liked it is this very specific thing, right? This very specific detail. And I'm looking for reviews that are honest. If I see a review that's glowing and super positive, I may not believe it. But if I see something that's pretty good and it's got a couple of bumps in it, then I'm more likely to believe it and believe that it's honest, right? And consistency. I want to hear about reviews that somebody goes to a specific place a lot and consistently gets great service. And now if you think about that last graph that we saw, then this graph, you'll actually find that there's quite a bit of disconnect. So that when we as business people or as marketing people are motivating people to review our site, sometimes it can be easier to motivate people who we've extremely impressed, right? Like if you have a customer and you've done an amazing job with them, you might want to slip them a little call to action like, hey, go review us, it would really help us out a lot, etc. But when people are reading your online reviews, that's not always what they're looking for because they think about things like honesty. And they think about things like details and consistency. So if you have regular customers who like your business, come back over and over again, and even if these folks sometimes have criticisms or suggestions of what you could do better, those are the people that you may want to think about trying to motivate somehow to write reviews for you, because those are the people that are going to write reviews that are much more interesting to people who are actually reading online reviews. And then when I looked at sort of how often do you write online reviews, I asked the question twice. One was positive, one was negative. The positive was the orange line, the negative is the gray line. And then I graphed it for or frequency. So the left of the graph is never, and then once a month, more than once a month, etc., all the way out to more than once a day. What you find is that typically the distribution tends to be about the same. People who write positive reviews, or people tend to write positive reviews a bit more frequently than write negative reviews. But the distribution in frequency is roughly about the same, never and less than once a month being the most common answers. So there does seem to be a class of people who write reviews more frequently, much more frequently than other people. Like the vast majority of people actually don't write reviews very often. You call them the reviewerati if you'd like. And then I asked this question, do you expect online or businesses to respond, do you expect businesses to respond to reviews? And I gave sort of several different options. Some of the options were they should respond to some reviews, good and bad. They respond to every review, good and bad. They should respond to some bad reviews, all the bad reviews, all the good reviews, some good reviews, they shouldn't respond at all. First of all, most interestingly, this is a survey, right? And with surveys, you always have to be careful because people aren't always going to answer surveys truthfully. It's not that they're being deceptive, but they're answering the way that either they think you want to hear, or more importantly, what they want to hear. So, generally speaking, if I ask a person, like if you just think about asking a normal person, do you want businesses to respond to online reviews? You're going to say yes because that just sounds like that's what you should be, right? You want that to be true. You want responding to be a positive thing that for a business to do. The actual data behind the matter may be entirely different. But when you see a survey where you're actually asking people and a little over 10% of people say that businesses should not respond at all, that's a telling statistic. Now, of course, a little over 40% said they should respond to some, and a little over 20%, almost 30%, said they should respond to all. So the majority of them did say they should respond to some or all bad and good reviews. Very few people said they should respond to only good or all the good reviews. Okay. And a significant portion actually said they shouldn't respond at all. So I think that that's actually pretty interesting. Being that, you may want to, before you decide on a strategy of responding or not responding, take a look at your competitors, see what they're doing, and see if you can find any correlation between competitors that respond to reviews and competitors that don't respond to reviews and their number of reviews or their number of ratings, etc. And then another thing that I was able to do, because I used SurveyMonkey's panel system here, where I could get certain demographic information about folks who answered my survey, I was able to break down the responses by a number of demographic information, a bit, number of types of demographic information. One of being which was income. And what I found is that when you look at respondents who said that they used Yelp, they tended to be very high income, right? They tended to be the right of the graph rather than the left of the graph. Left being lower income, right being higher income. So higher income folks tended to use Yelp more often. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think it tends to be a little bit of a more tech savvy kind of audience, but whatever it is, think about your business. You cater to high, middle income, lower income, whatever income folks. This kind of data should be useful to you because Yelp seems to be skewed to high income. TripAdvisor actually tends to skew very heavily towards high income users. Meaning, and so if you look at this graph, you see that most of the answers are sort of below negative, but only a little bit below negative, and then the 150,000 shoots way up. Like, so the really high income people use Yelp a lot more than everybody else. This one is a pretty even up line, and so basically there's a really strong correlation between your income level and it being high, and you're using TripAdvisor, which I think makes sense because people who are using TripAdvisor tend to be going on vacation. We can probably assume that higher income people tend to take more vacations, and so again, this is not to say that there's anything inherently, well, I think there isn't something inherently about TripAdvisor that leads to high income people, but if you are a higher income destination, if you are a higher income type of company, you need to think about what sites you're looking at, what sites you're monitoring, what sites you're talking about, what sites you're working with, responding if you decide you're going to respond, or motivating your guests to use. On the flip side of this coin, Google Local, right? There's a very high spike in low-income folks who use Google Local. And again, I don't know the reasons for this, but you need to think about this less from trying to understand the reasons and more from just trying to figure out how well do I know my audience, right? If I took a look at some of this data and I thought about my customers that come to the door that use my service or product, would I guess they're on? Are they on TripAdvisor or are they on Google Local? Right, and those are the kind of things that you need to think about because that should determine where you prioritize your time and your efforts into review sites. And Yahoo Local, now this demographic information here is not income level, but it's actually educational level. So to the left is like less than a high school degree, and all the way to the right is graduate degree. And what you find is that Yahoo Local actually skews to lower educational level folks, right? So again, I don't know why, but you need to think about, does the average person who comes to your door, do they have a bachelor's or a master's degree, or do they have a high school diploma, right? Because those are the questions you need to ask yourself that'll help you determine your sort of order of priorities when you're dealing with review sites. And then again, TripAdvisor, and a lot of these, this breakdown here is again educational level, not income level, but a lot of these breakdowns, the educational level and the income levels tend to kind of track together, and I think that's just typically due to the fact that income and education themselves tend to track together. And so again, you see that more highly educated survey respondents did tend to spend more time on TripAdvisor just because those are the kind of folks who are typically taking more vacations. And Amazon, rather than there being a big skew towards highly educated users, there actually tends to be a sort of negative skew with lesser educated users with lower educational levels. And for the record, I've only have a high school degree, so I'm on the left of this graph. But um, and so I don't know why this is with Amazon. You could probably wager a guess. It has something to do with income levels and sort of disposable income and impulse buying and all that kind of stuff. But again, think about if you're selling a product that can be reviewed on Amazon, especially if you are in a market where there's a higher sort of educational level generally that you are aiming for, and you're monitoring and you're thinking about Amazon. And then another thing I was able to do is sort of look at the average age in the survey, and the average age or the median age in the survey was 35. And so I broke the survey into folks who took it who were under 35, folks who took it who were over 35. So I'm not calling people who are over 35 old or people who are under 35 young. I'm just saying that was the middle of the survey, and I broke it in half that way. And so when I say older folks or folks who are older than 35, I don't mean that they're old. I just mean that they're over the median in this particular survey. And so Yahoo Local tended to skew towards folks who were over 35. And again, the reasons, who knows? But I think that Yahoo does tend to be a bit of an easier user, an easier use. A little bit less of a tech savvy audience compared to something like Yelp. And so, really think about what is the age range, what is the technical sophistication of your audience, and that should help you determine where they're going to be. And then when you look at that age breakdown, but you look at the exceptional, like the answers to the what makes you want to write an online review, and those sort of exceptional words like terrible, really bad, horrible, very bad, negative, so exceptionally bad things. People who are over 35 tended to be motivated more than people who are under 35 to write online reviews based on having really bad experiences. So people who are younger than 35 seem to give you a little bit more slack, according to this survey, if they had an exceptionally bad experience than people who are over 35 did, right? And so I'm not saying that you should, if you're going to give somebody a bad experience, then you should give the young people a bad experience, but right. Think about that a little bit, and really think that if you have some reason to believe that somebody is really likely to give you a review, you need to really think about what kind of experience they're having based on what sort of age group they're in. And then when you do that, the age breakdown again here, but you look at the question where I asked, do you expect businesses to respond to reviews? And specifically two answers. One answer was they should respond to all bad reviews, and then they should respond to all reviews, good and bad. And what you see is that people who were over 35 tended to say that businesses should respond to all the bad reviews more than people who were under 35, right? So people who were over 35 tended to say that you should respond to all bad reviews. Like if there's a bad review, you need to respond to it. Was kind of the thing that folks over 35 would be more likely to say than folks who are under 35. But then when you ask, they should respond to every review, good and bad, it was younger folks who were more likely to say that than older folks. So again, think about your target audience, think about your common customer. If they're over 35, then you may want to, they feel you need to respond, then you maybe want to focus only on the bad reviews. If they're younger than 35, then you may want to really think about, if you've chosen to make the decision to respond to all reviews, regardless of their sentiment, whether or not they're a good review. I was also able to do some male versus female breakdowns here, and I asked, one of the questions I asked again was, when you read online reviews, what are you looking for? And two of the common words were stuff about bias and complaining, meaning in a lot of these answers were people saying stuff like, "Oh, well, I know that certain reviewers are going to be biased, or the certain reviewers just always complain about everything." So that when I'm reading online reviews, like I'm cognizant of the fact that some people are just never going to be happy, and so the review isn't necessarily to be trusted. And so, blue bars males, orange bars females. What I found is that males seem to be a little more sensitive to this idea of bias, or just reviewers who are just going to complain about everything than females do. And so, again, I don't know a great reason, but really what almost all of these graphs speak to is know your audience, and that should help determine your online review strategies, knowing your audience really well. And then again, when you look at, when I ask a similar question, like how often do you see online reviews that you believe are fake? So this is so how sensitive people are to the potential for fake reviews, or reviews that are biased, like the last question was. And again, you see that the blue line here shifts to the right, so that means that men tend to report seeing what they believe are fake reviews more often than women do. And which is interesting, because if you look at the combined line, people see a lot of reviews they think are fake. And so that's something that I think you need to realize, that if you're going to engage in online review sites and make them part of your marketing, don't get led down the dark path of making fake reviews for yourself or for another business, because again, people are aware of both faking positively and negatively, as the last graph showed us, because people are sensitive to this. People do think that they see fake reviews all the time. They are aware that fake reviews happen. They don't want to be fooled. So you really, really need to shy away from that as part of your strategy, because you will get caught. And then another breakdown I did was frequent reviewers, those people who said that they reviewed very often, more than the average, and then just sort of overall. So the frequent reviewers here are represented by the orange lines, and the overall reviewers are represented by the blue lines. And what you find is that when you look at those exceptional words again, like really, really bad, exceptional, extreme, extremely, really good, horrible, very bad, great, and excellent, frequent reviewers were less motivated by exceptional experiences than the overall survey respondents were. Meaning, it is the elite Yelpers, or the common reviewers, the reviewers that review a lot of things, that are less motivated by extreme experiences. Meaning, and that's why they review more frequently, because they're not just waiting for an extreme experience. They're more likely to review any kind of experience, which to some degree makes them more interesting to an average online review reader, because again, the online average review reader is not looking for information on extreme experiences. They're looking for information, specific information, useful information about consistency, things that they can expect to see. And an extreme experience isn't necessarily something they can expect to see. And then when you ask, how often do you post negative online reviews, and you do that breakdown between the overall survey respondent and the frequent reviewers do report making more online, writing online negative online reviews more frequently, but they are frequent reviewers. And so when you actually look at how different the lines are, you would expect to see more difference. In fact, the peak for both is less than once a month. And so I think that's interesting, because then when you look at positive online reviews, frequent reviewers tend to have a lot more positive online reviews than negative reviews, right? And so it is those frequent reviewers, or a class of the reviewerati, as I had called them earlier, are an interesting class, because they're writing the kind of reviews that you want your review readers to see, and they're writing the kind of reviews that review readers want to see, but also they tend to write more frequent more positive than more negative reviews. And so these are definitely the types of folks that you really want to attract. So think about how you're going to, if you decide that online review marketing is something you need to engage in, think about how you're going to engage and persuade and convince frequent online reviewers to frequent your business, because those are the kind of reviews that you're really looking for. And then again, in that same question, what makes you want to write an online review, when you do that breakdown again, the orange bar is frequent reviewers, the blue bar is overall in the survey, you find that frequent reviewers typically say words like other and other people, so other customers, things like that, meaning they're thinking about the other people who frequent a business more than they're thinking necessarily about themselves, or they think about other people more than the average reviewer does. And so again, that's a very desirable trait, because that means these frequent reviewers are writing reviews that review readers and they're thinking about review readers, and they're thinking about other customers, and so they're writing reviews that are going to be more interesting to other folks. So that's the end of the data this week. This topic is a little bit different than some of the other stuff I've talked about, and it's the data is a little bit different. Like the way that I've looked at this is a little different than other data. So I'd love to hear your take on it. And really, I think this is one of the cases where you guys are going to have some really awesome ideas. Do you engage in online reviews sites as a part of your marketing efforts? Do you respond to online reviews? Should you respond to online reviews? And how do you encourage folks to write reviews? Do you encourage folks to write reviews? Should you? Is there a way to engage the frequent reviewer audience? These are all the questions that I would love to hear you guys answer. So please join me on the Facebook group, SciChat, and we'll have an awesome discussion about all these things. And I look forward to talking to you again next week. Goodbye, everybody.